Nebraska fan, I know it's easy to be down right now. It'd be really easy to think, oh, it's the same old Nebraska team. Nothing changed. New coach, new players, new staff, new schemes, same old Nebraska. Well, if that's what you think, I can understand it a little bit, but let me give you some hope. It is not the same team. It is not the same anything. Everything is radically different this year. And there are only two statistics you need to know to explain why Nebraska is not 2-0 versus 0-2. That's right, I said 2-0 because I think Nebraska is a better team than Colorado and a better team than Minnesota. And the two statistics I'm going to give you, well, at least maybe you won't agree with me that Nebraska is better than Colorado and Minnesota, but maybe I can pull you over into the camp that says Nebraska can still have a winning season, still go to a bowl game. I'm Don Collins. This is the Don Collins Show. And I'm going to share with you a couple statistics in this video that should give you hope. The season's not over, and there's a lot of reason to be hopeful between now and then 2023. It's not that nuanced. See, in 2023, there are two statistics, and only two statistics, that will outline for you what the problem is. Now, yes, Nebraska fan, we all understand it's about turnovers. But how much about turnovers is it? So before I talk about the turnovers, I do want to mention one thing about the offense. Nebraska is rushing for over 200 yards a game. And Jeff Sims, Gabe Ervin, and Ramir Johnson, the top rushers for Nebraska, are all averaging 5.4 yards a carry. Let that soak in for a moment. 5.4 yards a carry. If one guy on your team was averaging that, that'd be good. You have three guys on the team, your top three rushers, averaging 5.4 yards a carry. Matt Rule said before the year started, we'd be seeing a lot of running, smash mouth football, controlling things. That's what he's delivered on. That's exactly what's happening. And it's happening even better than you know, and we'll talk about why I can prove that in just a moment. But Matt Rule's coaching or philosophy is actually doing what Matt Rule wanted it to do. In fact, except for one series in Minnesota, there's not been a string of passes that was inexplicable or that wasn't appropriate, I think, for the down and the distance. It's been a steady stream of run, 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 pass, pass, or run, run, pass, run, run, pass. It's right now about 3 runs for every 2 passes. And you might argue maybe there needs to be a little bit more running or whatever, but it's certainly not the same old Nebraska any of us have seen for easily the last 20 years. We've not seen a team as committed to the run as this team is in 2023. Now, why is it important? It's important because of the first statistic we're going to talk about, and that's on turnovers. That's a glaring statistic, the glaring problem that all of us are concerned about. And all you need to know is this. In the last decade, across all college football, over thousands of games, if a team had a turnover ratio of -5 against them, their odds of winning the game were not 20%, they weren't 10%. Would it be surprising to you if I told you that only 5% of the time a team would win a game with a turnover ratio like that? That would be absolutely unbelievable, wouldn't it? Well, if it did surprise you, you're right, because the actual percent of games won was 0. 5 turnover differential, 0. You don't need to know anything else, but I'll give you a little bit more. Over the first 2 games, there have been not just 5 turnovers a game, but when you include the turnovers on downs that we saw against Colorado, 12 turnovers over 2 games. Now consider this, Nebraska had the ball 9 possessions in the Minnesota game, 13 in the Colorado game, an average of 11 possessions. 12 times, which equals greater than the average number of possessions they've had in these games. 12 times they gave the ball back to the other team. I don't care who your coordinators are. I don't care what your scheme is. I don't care what your coaching staff looks like. In fact, no, forget me thinking anything or Nebraska. Forget Nebraska. No team in all of college football has overcome that level of turnovers and won a game in the last decade. 0. It hasn't happened. So when you look at the offense, remember I told you a moment ago, I talked about why I thought the offense was even better than you even know. Imagine what Nebraska's done with the limited possessions they've had the ball. Imagine keeping the ball even half the time more. You're talking about not 200 yards a game rushing, 300 yards a game rushing. You're not talking about 10 points in one game, 14 points in the next. You're talking about maybe 20 points and 23 or 24 points. You're not talking about Colorado with 36 points and Nebraska 14. You're talking about Colorado with 23, 24, Nebraska 20, 21, somewhere in there in the closing moments of the game, and if that's all you do. Again, let me repeat to you. Nebraska turned the ball over as many times on average, as many times in the last two games as the average number of series they actually played in those games. That's a shocking statistic. And it's all you need to know about why Nebraska is 0-2 and not 2-0. Because their offense, when they have the ball, is doing what Matt Rule wants them to do. And they're doing a great job of it. Now let's talk about the second statistic. I told you there were two. The second is one that you probably haven't thought about. And this is one I do a little digging on. In the last decade, any team that allowed a differential on field position of 20 yards on the average field position on possessions, any team that did that only won 3% of the time over all of college football. In other words, if your starting field position was at, let's say, the 25 on average, and your opponent was at the 45 on average, well, you lost those games 97% of the time. Now, I bring this up to you because against Colorado, Nebraska's starting field position was around their 24-yard line, and Colorado's was around the 41-yard line on average. This means, and listen very carefully to what I tell you right now, in the Colorado game, Nebraska, through turnovers and lousy punts, one punt Nebraska had a net of 26 yards. 26-yard net. In the game against Colorado, Nebraska allowed Colorado an additional 190 yards of field position. Now, think about that. If all you knew was Nebraska would come into the game and give up 2 lengths of the field in field position and spot Colorado 6 turnovers, including the 2 turnovers on downs, and the 1 snap fumble that could have been a turnover that ended a drive when hit the fullback coming across the formation. If I told you that Nebraska would give up 200 yards, roughly 200 yards, 2 full lengths of the field, and 6 turnovers to any team, would you think they're going to win? Well, of course not. And even if you did think they were going to win, statistically speaking, it's never happened. I don't know what the actual numbers are over all of football history, but certainly in the last decade, it has never happened that a team could win under those circumstances. If you're a Nebraska fan, it may seem like a big problem, the turnovers, and I agree with you that it is an issue that's got to be solved. But Nebraska's offense is doing just fine. Nebraska's defense is doing just fine. They're doing more than just fine. Nebraska should be 2-0 right now, save for those turnovers and the field position. I'm not saying this to be Pollyanna. If you've watched my videos over the last year, now going to my second full season of videos, I don't pull any punches. I'm not saying this to pander to you. I'm telling you, have hope and have faith in Matt Rule and the offense and the defense. They work out the kinks on these turnovers. Here's the scary part. If all Nebraska does is not have 12 turnovers, cut those in half, they beat Minnesota, probably beat Colorado. This is not a season for you to hang your head. It's not over. I still think Nebraska is going to win a lot of games. I think they're going to a bowl game, and I think that the bottom, I know I said this on Saturday. I was a little depressed, maybe a little emotional after the game against Colorado. I said I didn't think the bottom was in last year. You know what? I'm going to take that back. I think the bottom was in last year. What we're seeing this year is a different Nebraska team on offense, a different Nebraska team on defense. The turnovers and the field position, that's it. Get those under control, and Nebraska is going to a bowl game in 2023. Don't worry about Nebraska. We're not going back to 3-9. We're not going to 4-8. I don't think we're doing 5-7. 6-6 or better is still on the table. Now, if you agree with me, leave me a comment. If you disagree, leave me a comment. But whatever you do, subscribe to the channel, pound that notification bell, post this wherever Husker fans are looking for content. And like I've always said in video after video after video after video, go Big Red.